Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys a review for Boruto episode 167. And I gotta say, man, this episode was pretty simple and straightforward. However, there was a lot of big stuff going on in this episode. And so now that episode 167 is done and in the books, I think it's time that we go ahead and talk about this. So I gotta be straightforward with you. For a setup episode, this was very well done, and I was actually pleasantly surprised with how good of a job they did on the artwork and on some of the animation, how they did with the music. I mean, this was really good. Like, there were a few moments where if you want to nitpick on the animation, I'm sure that you can. I'm sure there's probably somebody that will, but when you got those hospital scenes, they did such a good job just conveying the emotion and just the appearance that Boruto and Sarada, that their spirit was broken, and yet progressively as the episode went on, you could kind of see the light switch changing. And this was a watershed moment for them in their ninja careers, because up until this point, I mean, Team 7 has not really failed any of the missions that they've taken on. Like, they've had hiccups, but they've never actually failed a mission in this dramatic of a embarrassing fashion. Like, Deepa completely railroaded them, and it wasn't even a close battle at all. Like, at one point, Deepa last week was trolling these guys where Boruto thought this Rasengan worked, it didn't work, and then Deepa just starts laughing. And like a lot of you guys pointed out, you had that very iconic moment where Deepa basically looked at Boruto. He basically said, "You don't want to be like your father. That's cool. I'm gonna finger flick you the same way that Tsunade finger flicked your father and one shot you." And I love that, because it was a moment where Deepa was essentially showing them that I don't care how skilled you are, you're still little kids. You don't belong on the battlefield. So I thought that was interesting, that you see the way that they rebound and recover, and you get really good moments in this episode where you see how Sakura, as the lead medic of Konoha, the moment that she first sees her child being brought in, there's a moment where Sakura's guard drops, and then she immediately catches herself and begins giving instructions. And then you see the same thing when Naruto sees his son, and you just see how he's running, he's got the sweat drop on his face, and Naruto, for a brief second, you see that guard get lowered, and all of a sudden Naruto snaps back into the Hokage mode. And what's so beautiful about that is it just shows you another dynamic, that you got this Dr. Jekyll and Hyde type of scenario with Naruto, to where you have Naruto the father, and then you have Naruto the Hokage, and he's got to balance stuff like that. And it's little small tender moments like this that, as you reflect on the Boruto and Naruto relationship, it really pays off everything that happened leading up into the versus Momoshiki arc, where they made their making of amends. So I thought that was really cool to see that aspect of it right there. And what's so interesting about Boruto and Sarada going to the point where they're now gonna undergo training in order to beef up their biggest strengths, I like the fact that you're seeing them respond much in the same way that Shikamaru's team did for the Sasuke retrieval arc, where those characters were near death, and yet at the same time, after they recovered, they did what you're supposed to do when you're in a situation where life gives you something to where it's outside of your control. You bottle it up inside of you, and this is just my opinion, but you bottle it up inside of you. You never forget that feeling, and then you begin to press forward. Because if you forget that feeling, of loss, that feeling of hopelessness, that terror that comes with it, if you don't learn from that lesson, learn from that feeling, you're gonna fall right back into that trap. And so I like that you see that right there. And I also thought it was really interesting how, once again, you see the crack in the armor of some of these older characters. When you look at a character like Orochimaru, who has very long ties to the Hidden Leaf Village, he's been around for a while. Orochimaru sees his child, and for a moment he sees him as his child and not his test subject. That's character growth right there. But we get the revelation that with Mitsuki, it didn't just cap what he said when he said, well, I can't necessarily use this power my parent told me not to. We've had for a very long time how Orochimaru's just told Mitsuki, don't use Sage Mode, and when he uses it, it's very brief. And there was a fight in the manga where a lot of us were saying, like, damn, why isn't Mitsuki using Sage Mode? Well, now we know why. When he unleashes the full power of his Sage Mode, this is the byproduct of fully losing control and fully tapping into that power for an extended period. Mitsuki's organs are destroyed. His inner organs are destroyed. He's barely hanging in there. And so just to kind of go on to what the true purpose of this arc is, what this arc is supposed to do is establish Kara in the shadows and slowly bring them into light. And that's what we got here. We actually got a lot of context information about how long has Jigen been building Kara up? How long have they been in the shadows? Well, according to Deepa, we know that they're at least going back 5 years. So if they're going back 5 years, then that means that they got established the year before Naruto became Hokage. And that's really huge right there. That's huge. That's interesting right there, that it's at least going back 5 years. So that's kind of cool to see that aspect of it. Now, I saw a lot of people last week, they didn't understand how Victor's ability worked, and I thought it was pretty obvious, but you also have to remember, at least for me, sometimes I have to remember I read the manga, and so I pick out the little small lines that get mentioned in passing, and I can read in between the lines of what they're actually saying. And so with Victor, to explain how he sprouted out those extra arms last week and why he's so valuable to Kara, as Deepa said in this latest episode, is essentially what Victor can do is high-speed regeneration. And so when you look at maybe lizards and other reptiles that can grow back their limbs and sprout additional limbs, that's essentially what Victor was doing. He's just multiplying the cells inside of his body so fast that he is sprouting extra limbs. That's why he was able to get the extra 2 arms, and that's why they're so much bigger than his actual body, because of what's going on there. That's something that he prides himself on, but you can definitely tell that that's also something that he has enhanced his body to be able to do, because going back all the way to the beginning of the Kara actuation arc, we find out that one of the things that he wants to do is, fight off old age. So that's interesting to see that aspect of it right there. Now, moving into Boruto and Sarada, the thing that I will say is I thought it was a nice touch to allow the other members of Boruto's generation to look at Boruto and Sarada, see them struggling with their demons, and then you get those private moments where Boruto and Sarada, they appear to be on the verge of tears, they're sitting in the wheelchairs, they're utterly helpless. And what I like in that moment is that that's when they come to that resolve that they absolutely have to get stronger. I think both of them realize, because of how Namida and Wasabi and Dinky and Iwabe and Metal Lee, because of how shaken they were, and because everyone looks at this new Team 7 as being the standouts of their generation, there are more people who are counting on them to light the path forward. So it's very high expectations placed on them. And what I love about this moment right here is that you also get that moment where after everything's done, Sakura says, like, I'm worried about my child, but I cannot show that. I can't show that. It's better to allow them to stumble themselves. I don't need to hamper them. So that's interesting that you see that, and that you see them after Konohamaru leaves. After Konohamaru leaves, because he gets permission to investigate the Hidden Valley village and just monitor Victor, not engage, but monitor Victor to gather information. I like the fact that they realize that they cannot join Konohamaru. And what I like in that moment right there is that, as Konohamaru is walking out of the village, it goes back to what I said. Shikamaru, Sasuke, and Naruto, they put Konohamaru on a different level when it comes to the missions that he goes on. He's one of the few that they say you can go by yourself or you can go part of a 2-man team. The only other ninja who get those clearances are Sasuke, Naruto when he does step out, Kakashi, Sakura, Konohamaru, and Mujino. And with Konohamaru and Mujino, they typically go out as a part of a 2-man team, but there are times when both of them take on missions by themselves. But as we know from the anime and passing lines in the manga, those two are typically working together. So I thought that was nice that you see those two able to go out on a mission without being hampered by having to watch for Ganin and having to look for teaching moments that are ultimately going to slow them down. So I thought that was cool. Now, when it comes to the setup for the training, with Sarada learning to train with the Sharingan, I thought that was interesting that, they're setting that up in this episode. And next week's episode, it looks like it might be focusing more on that. Same with Boruto learning a different variation of the Rasengan. Going to Kakashi, that's probably the best thing, because, Kakashi, if you go back to the Academy graduation arc, Kakashi said, Boruto, your skill is already rivaling on a Jonin level. And so Naruto's not the best person to teach, and I've done a whole video talking about why Boruto ultimately goes to Kakashi to train. So I think that this opens up the door for something special. So my episode question to you guys is going to be, on a scale from 1 to 10, how important was it for the members of Team 7 to experiencing humiliating and heartbreaking defeat in this manner? Let me know down in the comment section below. And then the second question I have is, what type of Rasengan do you think that Kakashi is going to be able to teach Boruto? And would you like to see Boruto maybe add a fire change in chakra nature or a water change in chakra nature to his Rasengan? Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.